Blessings, good morning to you all. Why is it a good morning? Well, somebody said it's a good morning because it's a sunny day, but I think you get a lot of sunny days in Singapore. It's a good morning because we've come together to practice Dhamma. We've just done chanting in praise of Buddha Dhamma Sangha, spreading thoughts of metta to all beings, to ourselves, to others. We've recollected the simple truths of life, that we're all still subject to aging, sickness, death, separation from all that we love and like. This is why it's a good morning, because we've come together to hear the teachings, practice meditation, keep the precepts. So in that sense, any morning can be a good morning. Whether the weather is sunny or rainy, whether your life seems to be going well or not, whether the economy is up or down, whether the news is good or bad, in the end it's up to us to practice the Dhamma. And if we have an opportunity to practice, we have a place, we have an opportunity, this is our great good fortune, I would suggest. Just now we did chant the chant on spreading thoughts of loving kindness towards all beings. But you'll notice the beginning of that chant, we begin with ourselves first. May I be well, may I be free from suffering. You might say that's a fundamental part of our Dhamma practice. We have to keep coming back to ourselves. Practicing the Dhamma is something that is going to bring us to the point of well-being, to free our mind, meaning free our experience from suffering. And even though the world around us can be full of suffering, our mind doesn't have to be full of suffering. But in order to remove suffering, well, we have to practice. We have to come to understand it. Where does it come from? And apply the teachings that will help us to remove the suffering. Once we know where it's coming from, we go to the source, then we can change. This is why practice of meditation, coming into a quiet place, practicing mindfulness, sitting, walking, keeping precepts, being more composed. This is why it's so valuable to us, because it gives us a chance to get to know our own mind and really see these truths and know them for ourselves. To know suffering in your mind, to know what the cause is, to see that happening in real time, as opposed to on the pages of a book or listening to a talk, actually coming back to observe your own mind. And then applying the Dhamma to remove that suffering. So practicing meditation, although it's quite challenging, it's the highest kind of kindness for ourselves. And that kindness flows on to other people. Because if we understand better how to bring our mind to peace, to abandon suffering and its causes, the people around us will always benefit. One of the unfortunate consequences of being caught into any kind of stress or suffering is we often express it, and in the worst case we take it out on others. And that makes it worse. Makes it worse because we make karma. As we just chanted, I am the owner of my karma, heir to my karma. We inherit the results of our past actions all the time, good and bad. And the good is something to recognize, not to ignore or deny. But the bad is also something to learn from. And we've already been practicing this before, for sure. You wouldn't be sitting here right now if you haven't practiced keeping precepts, meditating in the past. You already have a foundation, whether you realize it or not. Just to be born as a human being has come about through your past good karma. Normally we say the keeping of 5 precepts, understanding the benefit of that, committing to removing the intention to kill, steal, commit acts of sexual misconduct, lie, to get intoxicated, removing those intentions, such a powerful karma. If you do it regularly, frequently, well, it will be the causes not only for happiness in this life, but also for human rebirth in the future. So you've already done it before, at least sometimes. We all have a checkered past, but we wouldn't be here if we hadn't practiced before. And to be able to sit quietly, listen to a Dhamma talk, to have the faith, to have the interest, and to have the good feeling, the happiness arise that will keep you doing this, means you've also done that before. There must be something in this practice that attracts us. Because nobody forces you to be here, I don't think. Nobody was forced. Nobody's paid to be here, I don't think. In the corporate sector they do pay staff to go on to mindfulness courses to improve their work output maybe. But you're all here because you want to be here. Because you sense in one way or another this is a good thing. Maybe already you're feeling some happiness in what you're doing. Just to be here, come into a temple with fellow practitioners gives a good feeling, doesn't it? That's part of the good karma of practicing the Dhamma. You quite often feel something tangible, more peaceful, more calm, have a better, stronger feeling of well-being than you would if you didn't practice. So there's many ways we benefit from the Dhamma practice. Partly it is intellectual, you're just developing understanding of what is the path, what's not, what is good karma, bad karma, cause and effect. Just getting the understanding, the view, the thoughts, the way we think about things correct. But there's also something going on a deeper level, you might say, on the level of feeling. emotion. When you practice loving kindness, that's a positive emotion. Maybe even in the beginning it's hard to find. Some people come on retreat and you encourage them to cultivate the meditation on metta, bhavana, loving kindness. And straight away they say, what's that? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to have metta? It's so unusual for some people that they really have to think about it. What is the feeling of loving kindness? It's both a thought, an aspiration, and a feeling together. It's a positive emotion. Everyone can chant the words, may I be well, may all beings be well. But the feeling is something you have to focus on and bring up. Maybe in the beginning you have to imagine it. What does it feel like when I have loving kindness? Maybe hard to put into words. Say if you bring up a feeling of loving kindness, say for me, I usually do it, focus on the chest area, the heart area. So it seems to be the center where mind and body come together. And when you're stressed or you're suffering, you'll often feel tension there, or pain even. But when you going in the other direction, you start bringing up thoughts of kindness, maybe with mindfulness, maybe with faith in the Buddha and his teachings, the Dhamma as well. That area, the center area of your being, where the heart, the mind, the body meet, starts to relax. So as you practice focusing on metta, the feeling becomes more tangible as you relax. Some of this mental and physical energy starts to center in that area, but it's a relaxed feeling with the quality of knowing, mindfulness. The more you do that, you realize, this is quite a profound practice. Changing thoughts rooted in stress, craving, attachment, confusion, into thoughts rooted in unconditional loving kindness, even though at first maybe it's not that unconditional, but that's our goal. And that's a change, and it will be reflected in how you feel. So a very good practice to start your day is just do a meditation cultivating the thought, the feeling, the positive emotion of loving kindness every day. Quite often we teach it in response to stress, feelings of anger and so on. We say, practice developing loving kindness for yourself, for all beings. And often we think of it in a limited way like that. When you're feeling angry or stressed, cultivate loving kindness. But you can cultivate it as a regular practice, whether you're feeling stressed or not, whether you have anger or not. Because you're always with yourself. Wherever you go to, in every situation. And the cultivation of loving kindness as a meditation and as a regular practice, it's something that nourishes the heart, generates these positive emotions, and these lead on to other good things, nourishes other aspects of the Dhamma practice to come up. So say if you regularly practice loving kindness meditation in the morning, for example, which doesn't mean to say you can't practice it at night. I'm just giving the suggestion to practice first thing in the day. If you do that, then you're already bringing up what we call right intentions, Samma Sankappa, the intention of non-ill will, non-hatred, non-ill will, right from the go, in the beginning of your day. And the way the Buddha explained how the human mind works, it's a process of cause and effect, cause and result. So if this is the cause, one of the causes in the beginning of your day, you bring up the thought and the feeling of loving kindness. One of the results is that it will keep popping up into your psyche, into your consciousness through the day, especially if you practice more and more regularly. Your mind will come back to the thought, the aspiration of loving kindness. Sometimes without prompting, it will just go back to the thought of kindness. And from that you also gain the aspiration of forgiveness, compassion, forgiveness, sympathetic joy, mudita, sharing in the happiness of others. And the hardest of the Brahmaviharas to develop is upekkha, equanimity, evenness of mind, but it will come out of the metta. Metta, goodwill, when practiced with equanimity and moving towards equanimity, is what helps us to develop goodwill for everyone. So for ourselves, even when we're annoyed with ourselves or angry with ourselves. For others, even when others have hurt us in some way and we are tempted to be angry. We practice goodwill, and the equanimity helps us to separate out our feelings of being hurt, anguish at what somebody has done, or who they are. Maybe they've hurt someone else or they've hurt us. And part of the mind is resisting having goodwill for them. The equanimity is guiding the loving kindness. So you're not hiding the fact that maybe that person has done something wrong or bad, but you're also seeing there's something you have in common with them. They're still a human being who feels, who doesn't want to suffer, who still is subject to old age, sickness and death, and still has karma. And if they have done things wrong, that karma will be bringing results, suffering back to them. And when we practice metta, going out to all beings, you're not expecting to love and like everyone. This is different from attraction, romantic love, and all the different kinds of more what you might call material or worldly love. This is just one very pure aspiration that you're sending out in all directions. It has a very nourishing effect on your mind, very powerful kind of good karma. And you can even have loving kindness for those you don't like, or those who you don't approve of, or those who have hurt you. Because if you have this thought, then both yourself and whoever is receiving this loving kindness this is the right kind of nourishing quality to affect wholesome, skillful change in you, in others. Anguish and hatred doesn't lead to any kind of skillful change, does it? It leads to wanting to punish, hurt, harm, and generates more negative karma which comes back to us. And this is why the first precept is the precept of refraining from harming living creatures. Not harming oneself, not harming others, even animals, even the things you hate most, bugs and snakes and creatures. Because there has to be that basic understanding of the power and the role of goodwill in developing the human mind, and then in our actions, the way we act, the way we speak. Sometimes we just have to reflect on it. When we don't have metta, goodwill, what's it like? Say you're in a conversation with someone and you're getting annoyed for some reason. The tone of your voice changes, your facial features might change, your choice of words changes, the emotion comes up. Maybe if you're getting angry, we become more critical, sometimes more mean, spiteful, words are harsher. If you're in an argument and you're getting more and more angry, you've lost your metta, maybe you just try and win the argument by volume. The one who can shout louder wins. But it's no win, is it? You upset yourself and you upset the other person. Maybe for a long time, occasionally for a lifetime. A few seconds, a few moments when you've lost metta and then you speak or act in anger can have life-changing, lifetime consequences. And that's something we have to observe, but think about, reflect on, the consequences of actions. And that's why at the end of that chant we have this reflection on karma. I'm the owner of my karma, heir to my karma. Everything I do, good or bad, will come back to me. What we give out comes back. I'm from Australia, so we talk about, karma is like the boomerang. The boomerang, you throw it, goes around, comes back to you. That's something you have to keep reflecting on, that helps you to see the value of cultivating this quality. Sometimes we forget when you get lost, say you're in the midst of a busy day or a stressful situation, it's quite easy to lose metta, which is why it's such a good practice to begin the day by practicing, cultivating loving kindness. At least once a day your mind has set that up as a thought, aspiration, as a feeling, internal feeling, and then as it were sent it out around. And then you go off and go through your day, you may well forget it. Unless perhaps you're doing a metta meditation all day regularly. Few people do that, but most people don't. There'll be times when you completely forget metta. It's not there in your mind for a while, and that's where other more negative qualities will slip into your mind, into your thinking, into your speech, your actions. Things change. We can learn from that. When you got a few moments, stand in front of a mirror, if you have a mirror. If you're in the monastery, you might not have a mirror. There's not many mirrors in monasteries. But if you're at home, you probably have a mirror. And you can spend many minutes, tidying up the hair, washing, applying makeup, some products, and adjusting clothing. In the course of one day, many minutes. In the course of one life, that's many hours. But just do something different, a different experiment maybe. Stand there and just pull a face of anger. Look at it. What does it look like when your face is angry? If you're really angry, your mouth opens and you see the teeth. In a horror movie, usually you'll see it, the most scary thing is some monster with their teeth showing. Because teeth, psychologically, they refer back to animals that attack us, tigers and whatever it is that's attacking us. And you see the teeth, trouble is coming. So anger and teeth go together. And of course you frown, you get wrinkles, you get frowns, your eyes change. Eyes are another one to watch. When you're angry, Look in the mirror. What happens to your eyes when you're angry? Eyes that can sort of change their look. If you're somebody who meditates often, you look in the mirror at your own angry face, or you look at someone else who's angry, even there's a sort of darkness, like a dark fuzziness or cloudiness comes over the face for a while there's anger there. It's a bit hard to do it on yourself if you're faking it in the mirror, because it's not genuine. But if you see someone who's angry, then the darkness of their mind and the strength of that mood covers over their face. The flow of their mind changes, so the thoughts coming up, the speech that comes out in speech, and then the actions become more destructive. You could do it in the same way you could listen to yourself if you record angry exchange. Say you're being angry and you record it. What does it sound like? Your tone of your voice changes. It doesn't sound pleasant on the ear. Or the same when you listen to someone else. Or reading text and email written in anger. They don't read the same as when there's loving kindness. We can see it in others, we can see it in ourselves. But this is part of the reflection on why we practice loving kindness. What does it do to a human being? Well, it improves us when we cultivate loving kindness. There's the physical feeling, we become more calm, our actions tend to be less harmful and destructive, and it nourishes and brings up all these other qualities such as patience and compassion, mindfulness. Is supported by loving kindness. Generally they go together. If you want mindfulness, which you probably all do, we all want to be more mindful, cultivate loving kindness together. What happens when we're caught into a train of anger? Well, we lose our mindfulness. We make mistakes. It's hard to concentrate when you're angry. It's hard to sit on a meditation cushion if you're starting to remember something that brings up anger. You wriggle around, or you may just open your eyes, you may just get up. I can't do this. Strong anger would make you act in that way. The results are totally different. That's something you have to look at, understand, and then this will strengthen your practice of metta, because you'll see it's really worthwhile. It's like you're cultivating the humanity, the human qualities in you. That's why they say it will lead to rebirth as a human being. If you really practice it in a strong way as a meditation, maybe to the point of jhana, reborn as a Brahma God, heavenly realm. But if you're practicing the Buddhist path, it really is an essential part of the practice. Bringing up the sense of well-being and then also wishing it for others. And this is not kind of trying to convince yourself that the world, everyone is good, everything is good, it's all okay. We know there's lots of problems, conflicts, destruction in the world, but we're taking responsibility for ourselves, one person, one human being in this world. And when you practice meditation like this, this is one of the times you really can cultivate it in an ongoing way, but in a very effective way. To keep the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts requires goodwill. And where do you get the strength to renounce, say, if you're keeping 8 precepts, not eating in the evening, not engaging in entertainments, sports, listening to music, like we do when we're on a retreat, we keep the 8 precepts. Partly it's because of that wish for yourself to improve, to develop higher states of happiness, to develop samadhi, to develop insight. That's coming from metta, isn't it? Goodwill. You're wishing yourself well, and it will have an indirect effect on the people around you, because when you keep 8 precepts, you're generally at your best. You're harming the world least, you're using up the minimum of the world's resources. So it's green to keep the 8 precepts, eco-friendly. But it's coming from this aspiration of goodwill for yourself, for others. And you get energy from that, but good energy, positive energy. And we don't keep precepts just to look down on those who don't keep precepts. The Buddha said that's a foolish way to do it. You're not trying to boost our ego and say, oh, I am someone with precepts, practicing loving kindness, I'm really good, and then start looking down on everyone else as these poor people or bad people. It's not like that at all. We're developing a very strong, tangible feeling of loving kindness in ourselves, and then using that, you could say, in our way, the way we interact with other people for the benefit of others. One thing people always say is, oh, I practice metta every day and I help family and I help this and that person, and then some people are not grateful, and some people don't treat me very well, they don't appreciate it. Well, that will happen, won't it? What other people do, that's their concern in the end. You can't control that. What you can control and develop is your own heart, your own thinking, your own actions, your own state of mind. And you have to separate. And going back to the teaching on karma, the karma of cultivating loving kindness and maybe expressing it through dana, sharing, keeping precepts, or in meditation, sending out the thought. That's the good karma, and there's no doubt about that. That's cultivating a good intention that will have an uplifting effect on you, that will be making good karma. But if someone else doesn't respond with reciprocal metta, they still hate you, or they don't care about you, or they're not grateful and don't appreciate what you're doing, you have to accept that. And your metta has to be able to cope with that. But that's a separate part of the whole story, isn't it? That's them, what they're doing. It may lead you to modify how you relate to that person. If you keep being kind to someone and they keep hurting you, well, maybe you change how you interact with them. But it doesn't change the fact you've made good karma by spreading metta or being kind to someone. And this is a more mature approach, isn't it? That's why you need the equanimity to help your metta. If your metta is, I'm only going to be kind to you if you're kind back to me, well, there's some good in that, but it's a very fragile kind of metta. The Buddhist path, we're developing these qualities in a very deliberate and a very strong way, so that our practice, say, of the precepts is unshakable. Even if you encounter unpleasant people, or people around you are tempting you to break your precepts, or they're not supporting you in the precepts you keep, you understand that keeping these precepts is a good thing, and you're not going to be swayed by the behavior of others. That's the kind of metta in practice, you might say. Takes mindfulness, takes patience, takes many qualities together. Or like, if you're a parent, bringing up kids, there'll be days when your kids are angry with you. Maybe you've been the angry kid in your past, blaming a parent or a sibling, or maybe you're the one on the receiving end, being blamed, being angered, experiencing anger. But that doesn't change the fact, you have a relationship and you still have the kindness to try and deal with that person. Anger comes from delusion, not knowing, not understanding. So if you cultivate loving kindness with mindfulness and with equanimity, and you encounter someone, whether they're close to you or far away from you, and they express anger, the real solution from your point of view is compassion, isn't it? Kindness, compassion, tolerance. If you respond with anger to someone else's anger, it will only get worse. The fire will only get bigger. And we prove that every day, don't we? If somebody hurts your feelings, or they insult you, or they do something towards you, if you respond with anger, it just gets worse, doesn't it? Living in Australia for 22 years, a number of people have told me how another driver on the road made them angry. So then they got angry and they drove badly, and the first person drove badly and even ended up having a crash. You respond to another person's anger with more anger, it gets worse. Or the monk in the monastery who gave in to his anger when a kangaroo got too close to him. On a rainy day, he was carrying an umbrella. The kangaroo got too close to him, so he held up his umbrella like a sword and tried to poke the kangaroo. After that, the kangaroo never forgot. Became enemies. People don't forget, do they? So once you've displayed anger, somebody's going to remember that, and maybe you're labelled for life, or at least for a while. It only makes it worse, doesn't it? Non-anger is what overcomes anger. Non-anger in your own mind, non-anger in your relationships with others. It's one of the highest tests, but the Dhamma is to be tested, isn't it? It's something you practice and put into practice, and you have to observe and see what's going on. And non-anger will dampen the fire down. In your own heart, it starts to quieten your heart down if there's been the flames of anger, and it may be effective to help dampen the anger down in someone else. The times you see it most clearly are, say, when people who are relatives, family members, or perhaps previously were friends, who've fallen out through anger, arguments, differences of opinion, one thing or another, and then at least one party makes the effort to cultivate metta and direct it to the other party. Often you get very dramatic, quick results. So just in the last few weeks, there was one lady who I knew who was, her auntie was not speaking to her. And then she started spreading metta to the auntie. And this lady was in hospital for surgery, so she had a lot of time on her hands, and also was realizing it's not a good situation when your close family member is not talking to you, not returning your calls, not visiting. It's not very pleasant. So she's practicing the metta, and within a few days the auntie turned up at the hospital to visit. A big turnaround. And almost certainly that's from the power of metta, meditation, sending thoughts of loving kindness to that person, and a change in the sort of psychological relationship. Or another one, also recently, a mother and her son not talking. The son is not talking to the mum for a long time, and the mum is so sad. Her son is not talking to her. For whatever reason, son has turned against mum, which is not a good thing, but it's happened. So mum just keeps practicing loving kindness directed towards the son, forgiving, wishing well. Then again, out of the blue, son rings up and a dialogue starts again. As a monk, you witness this kind of thing all the time, people falling out through anger, but then people can get back together or repair relationships through the power of metta. It has a cleansing effect on your speech, your actions. It has an effect, it's unbinding your mind from anger. The root cause of a lot of our suffering is ill will. It's helping you to unbind your mind from that, so then the whole train of your mind and then the train of your karma changes for the better. And sometimes in some situations there's nothing you can do on the outside. If someone is not seeing you, not talking to you, you can't do anything other than meditate. So if you've learned that, how to do it, at least you've got something to do. This person hates you, is causing you trouble, doesn't like you, and you spread thoughts of metta, and you keep doing it. Probably once is not enough. It can change things for the better. Changes you, changes them. And even if you're not particularly, or you have no anger, or they have no anger for you, maybe somebody who's far away but suffering, can send your thoughts of loving kindness to them. There's maybe no way to talk to them, but you can meditate for them. People who are sick, maybe in hospital or unconscious or very weak, maybe near their death. We always have this problem, what do I do? What can I do? What can I do in this situation? You feel helpless. You can always chant for them, sit down, meditate for them, next to them or in another place, doesn't matter. And you trust in these good intentions that you're developing in yourself. It's a good thing for you for sure, there's no doubt about that. It's a very skillful kind of good karma to bring up the thought of metta. And then if you send your thoughts, send that feeling as it were to the other person, you'll probably doubt, you think, what good will this do? Well, certainly it doesn't do any harm, does it? And if it can in any way help them, boost them, support them, in any way, why not? It's something you can do. If your loved one is in a hospital, unconscious or very weak, asleep, the doctors and nurses do their part with the physical symptoms, but you can do your part with the mental suffering of that person, wishing them well. So if you've learned that, you have to learn with yourself first, don't you? You learn it, you become familiar with that practice, so ideally do it every day. Then, when the time comes, it could be unexpected, could be any time, you have something you can do. So it's very much a fundamental part of Buddhist practice, cultivating the thought of loving kindness, out of that compassion, sympathetic joy, just the natural happiness at your own success and freedom from suffering, other people's success, freedom from suffering. It's just a natural happiness, but it's something you can consciously cultivate. But we also use equanimity, upekkha. We cultivate that, the understanding of karma. Because say in the case of somebody who's dying, you're spreading metta to them, you're not expecting necessarily that they're going to recover. Maybe they're so close to death, there's nothing you can do to stop them dying. So you need the equanimity to stop you becoming sad or overwhelmed by that situation. But you still practice loving kindness for them, because maybe that helps to soothe their mind at a time when maybe they need any help they can get mentally. So metta is not like, it doesn't become just again going back to wanting things, trying to get things from people. I want this person to lend me some money, so I'll spread metta to them. Or wanting something. It's not that. Or in the case of somebody who's very sick, you spread metta to them, maybe they'll still be very sick after you spread metta, but psychologically maybe you can help them. You're separating between mind and body here. Say your loved one, or you yourself or your loved one has an accident, breaks a leg or something. You spread metta to that person in your meditation. It's not necessary that their leg is going to heal. Hopefully it will heal, but the meditation is not going to heal the leg. But you're working on the level of the mind now. Wishing them well, hoping that they can come to accept what's happened to them and be free from the mental stress, the mental suffering they may be experiencing. Or yourself. You say you have an accident or some misfortune, and you spread metta to yourself. You may not be able to cure your disease or fix the injury or solve the misfortune on the outside. Maybe there's nothing you can do. But on the inside, it's the awakening of the mind, bringing up these wholesome qualities at a time when you will really benefit from them. So metta also supports the practice of wisdom and understanding. Because when you have a feeling of well-being, you can recognize what's going on better, your mind is clearer, and then you can think things through better. If you're still caught into anguish, say you or your loved one is suffering, you're caught into the anguish, it's going to be hard to think of a good way to deal with that situation. Your initial thoughts may be just anguish, despair, maybe overwhelmed by the stress, the suffering of the situation, and can't think of what to do and don't know what to do. But if you can cultivate metta at that time, it may calm your mind down enough so then you can see what the pathway, what the right thing to do is, what the way forward is, what the situation is. Maybe the situation is not as bad as we think. And when you have metta coming up, that's what helps reveal that to you, shows you that. How much of our problems in life, we meet with some problem and then we start thinking, oh, this is the end, what am I going to do, what am I going to do? Or very angry. If you can bring up the metta, those kind of negative thoughts calm down, then what? Oh, maybe I can tolerate this, maybe I can live with this problem, maybe it's not the end of the world. If you think back in your life, from this day back to your childhood, how many times have you maybe been in a situation where you were suffering? You may be very upset, angry, sad, afraid, hopefully not, but probably the reality, the likelihood is you have had a few times like that. But they've all gone now, haven't they? They've all passed. They were temporary. Sometimes they come back up as memories, and memories can be traumatic, of course, but generally they've passed. If you now reflect back with a mind of metta, you can see, most of the suffering was my emotional reaction, my thinking, my mood around that problem. The actual problem itself, arose and passed away, finished. Sometimes feelings of guilt are like that. You keep remembering something that went wrong, something you did, something that went wrong, and you just focus on that. You just remember that one mistake or that one aspect of what happened, and you keep feeling bad about it, blaming yourself, feeling bad. If you bring up the metta, maybe that will help you look at it in a more balanced way, and you see, okay, maybe I made a mistake or did something wrong, but maybe you also did something good. There'll be different aspects of that situation you can look at. You need to calm your mind down so you can do that. I remember one lady, she cared for her sick father who couldn't move, so part of her duty was to feed him, and he had problems swallowing. And she did this for many years. She was his primary carer, and eventually he died because he choked on food. And so for years this lady had this feeling of guilt that somehow she had killed her father because she had been feeding him, and then he eventually choked on the food because he was having so many problems with his muscles and the swallowing process, and she couldn't revive him when he choked. He couldn't breathe. It wasn't even absolutely sure that the choking alone was what killed him. He had other symptoms. He was very weak and very ill. But she always had this guilt that she had been the cause of her father's death. And I said, well, how long did you look after him? Or 5 years or some very many years she was caring for him 24 hours a day. I said, well, that's very good karma. That was a very good thing to do, coming from loving kindness. We all have to die from something, and if somebody is very weak, it's very easy to choke or have breathing problems, heart attack. All kinds of things can happen that are not necessarily us. If we spent 5 years caring for someone, sincerely, kindly, that's what you remember, isn't it? And the unfortunate, last part of their life, you just have to accept that, because everyone dies of something. When our mind is not calm, the metta goes, and we just focus on what's wrong, the fault in ourselves, the mistake, the fault in someone else, their mistakes, what's wrong, and we forget all the good stuff. And of course we feel bad, we feel depressed, guilty, sad. So I was saying at the beginning of this talk, whenever you're feeling depressed, one thing you can go to is, you've been born as a human being. That's a result of very good karma. You've been born as a human being, you're relatively healthy, no one's perfect, I'm not perfectly healthy, you're not, but relatively healthy. And you've come to hear the Buddhist teachings, you have faith in the Buddhist teachings. So if we were to compare it in worldly terms, you hit the jackpot. You won the lottery, you won the prize, you're here, human, healthy, listening to Dhamma, practicing Dhamma. You can't ask for more. Everything else is secondary. You've already achieved many great things. Sure, there's more to do, of course, We're still unenlightened, we still got to practice for enlightenment, but we have a very good foundation, a good start. So don't forget that, especially when you are feeling down, angry, depressed. We learn from things, so we learn from our mistakes and what goes wrong, but don't forget the good things you've done as well. And it just is, it's just truth. It's not like, something to boost your ego. I was born as a human being. Everyone can say that. So was I was a human being, I'm a human being. Yeah, well that's good. It's the fruits of your good karma. So it's not a competitive thing, I'm better than you or whatever, but it's just truth. This is the result, fruits of past good karma, coming to hear the Dhamma, hearing the Dhamma, having faith in the Buddha is past good karma. It's current karma as well, you're kind of continuing on from what you've done before. But this is the good side of your life that you shouldn't forget, should never forget. You having your parents, they gave birth to you, fed you, brought you up. Whether you like them or not, that's different. We have personality differences, different views on things, that's normal. But the fact that you've been brought into the world, cared for, brought up, so now you're a healthy adult, that's your good karma as well. Most people, when they practice Dhamma, they tend to start kind of opening up to the process of karma, cause and effect, and they'll notice a lot more how much good karma they've received in their life, help, support, obviously from parents, family, but other people. It's quite a natural awakening as you practice meditation, and as the metta comes up, you're noticing the good that you've done, in an unbiased way. You're not sort of getting lost in your head, oh, I'm so good, but just noticing good things you've done. And then you also notice the good that others have done for you. It's just a natural part of mindfulness and metta. As your mind is in a place of well-being, you'll notice the good more and more. The good in yourself, the good in others. And even though you also notice the bad, the evil, the bad, if you're noticing the good, the bad is, you can cope with that, and then you can learn from it rather than just react with anguish. So I'd recommend some metta meditation every day. Probably best is in the morning, but whatever suits you. For this morning, maybe I'll say just this much, and we have some time left to carry on meditating, but I'll stop speaking here and we carry on our meditation.